Hey everyone, and welcome back. I'm so excited that we are continuing this series about GraphQL with the lovely Eve. Hi, Eve.
Hello.
So if those of you who have been following along, we've talked about a lot of things so far. Eve has done some amazing, given us an amazing background on understanding GraphQL microservices, how to create a federated service, orchestrating services behind a gateway. And Eve, this is just like the hot stuff right now. Like GraphQL contributor days, where people just like not about to like fight each other about their opinions. Like,
Totally. This is such a hot issue, and I feel like as bigger companies are picking GraphQL over other technologies, it's
yeah,
like they have to do something in this kind of federated way, but there's
yeah.
different ways of doing it, and so people get passionate, Tracy, as you know, about and they try to fight about everything. So
Yeah. It's like the like where's like the biggest points of contention, do you feel like?
I think that when you start to move to GraphQL, it feels like a lot of people, it doesn't feel like a lot of people in the organization in general just have to kind of get on board, and you have to come around to how you want to do GraphQL there. And
Mm-hmm.
so picking tools and figuring out who's involved in managing the schema and what approaches to take. People have wildly different ideas about what is appropriate to do there. And then a lot of the people aren't even on board with GraphQL in general yet. And
Right.
so like that is it's a tricky sales pitch
Yeah.
to a lot of different types of people.
Well, and then you have company politics.
Yes.
And then it's like, okay, then just decisions are made that don't even make any sense because politics.
Yeah.
Like, okay.
Yeah, 100%. And also, we have adopted a lot of new technologies over the last 5 years already with
Yeah.
Redux and React and whatever those might be. And I feel like people want to not always jump on the next thing right away. So,
Well, I don't know. I feel like people say that and they complain about the instability. And then
yeah.
when everything's stable, people are like, well, where's the innovation? So it's like, oh, come on, people.
Yeah, people just
Um,
need something to argue about no matter
yes.
what.
But more stuff means more amazing videos.
Exactly.
Um, okay, so today, what are we talking about?
So today we are talking about how we orchestrate uh, the different data types now that we already have our gateway put together. So we have this gateway here.
Do you want me to share
Um,
your screen?
yes, and I should
Okay.
say that, but I always forget to. Um, we put together this gateway that's hosting up our schema for users and our other schema for colors so that anybody can just visit this endpoint and they can get data about everything. But the whole graph part of GraphQL is because we're talking about connected data, right? So it doesn't matter if we are not connecting these different data types. So in order to do that, we need to make sure that our account service and our color service are kind of using the types that are part of the schema. So let me show you what I mean. In our schema for our account service, we have a user type. It has a few different fields on it. In our color service down here, we have all of our details about the color service. So each one of these has its own team managing it. But what happens if I have a user who posts a bunch of colors or a color that's associated with a user? I need some sort of way of connecting these types. So the way that I'm going to do that is I'm going to create what's called an entity. So we think about an entity as being a type, like a user, that can be extended and resolved across different services. So if I need to reference this user somewhere else in maybe a review service, a color service, a product service, I need to be able to look it up. So the way that we do that is we're going to use the at key directive. Think of a directive as being like a little decorator that we add to a field to indicate that this is something that should be accessible across different types. So this is our lookup, right? It's going to be an email field that we can use to look up this user, no matter what service we are using. And then what we need to do is we need to reference this in our resolvers. So down here, if we take a look at our resolvers, which I got to keep everything on the same screen, right? Something like that. So resolvers are these functions that are going to return data to fulfill the requirements of the schema. So in other words, if I have a query called, let's find it. If I have a query called accounts, I have a function called accounts that's called every time I ask for that field. So we're just talking about a schema and a bunch of functions that are related to each other. But the exciting part, which I swear this is the exciting part, is we need to add to our resolvers a function for user. So for this, we're going to use this function called resolve reference. And this is going to help us perform that lookup. So we're going to look it up by email. We're going to use this. All right, never mind. I'm closing this. We're going to use this function called find account, which is like a little helper function that we can use to look something up. And then we'll say return find account with that email. So what's cool is we can extract a lot of the logic into separate functions. Those can be tested, and we should be good to go. So let's get this thing going. We're going to start our account service. We also want to start our color service as well. And then we'll start this one too. Awesome. Already in use. That's okay. We don't need that one anyway. I was going too far. But let's go to localhost 4001. And this should be our server for the accounts. So now we'll see something that's kind of cool here. We see that, remember that that underscore service field that we saw before when we turn this into this subgraph service. This is now exposing this type called an entity. So an entity is a union type, and a union type is just something that we can return one of two or three different things. And this is meaning that this user type can be consumed by another service. So just a word on a union. An example of a union here in this Snowtooth API. So this is a fake ski resort that has a real GraphQL API. Let's say that I had a query called search. So we're going to search by the term S. We're looking up all of our trails and all of our lifts that start with an S. So this type name here is going to return a bunch of different lifts and a bunch of different trails. So what this is saying is that I can return a list of a few different things. So if I want fields from a trail, I can get them. If I want fields from a lift, I can get those too. So what an entity union is doing for us that we saw in our sandbox here is a user is something that we can return a list of, meaning that other services can use this implementation to connect data across different services. So this allows us to still, like me working alone, you working alone, we don't have to talk to each other too much, even though we do like talking to each other. We can just kind of go about building our own parts of the application. And then from there, still use connected data. So this is cool stuff. So this is how we connect those two different things. And then anything that has that key that we add to our schema here is going to be something that we can access from anywhere. So performing that lookup is something that we can do across those services.
Nice. It's super powerful. It's like, well, I don't know. I mean, do developers like to talk to each other? Like, maybe not. So this makes it easier for them.
Yeah, maybe not. But it means that you can still utilize data from other places, connect data from other places, but you don't have to be too bogged down in kind of tying these data types too closely together. It lets you
Yeah.
reference them versus hard coding everything together in a way that can be a little rife for chaos, I feel like is
Yes.
a good way to say that.
I love that. Awesome. Well, cool.
Well, nice. Yeah. So that's our entity type. We're able to connect those different types. In our next video, we'll learn a little bit more about how we can connect from colors back to users and then access everything on the gateway.
All right. I'm excited. So stay tuned for the next episode, which will be the last one in the series. But if you've been paying attention, this has been a ton of fun. And I feel like this was just like such an easy, it was like one of the easier things to do. So can't wait to wrap this up.
Totally. It's exciting. I want there to be more to it so we can talk more, but it's really just a couple lines of code.